Welcome to our channel. Today we will dive into the chronicles of the sacred book, exploring stories that have spanned centuries and continue to inspire millions around the world. Join us on this journey of faith, tradition, and teachings that have shaped civilizations. And if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a like. Let's discover together what these ancient texts still have to teach us today.
Mary was born in a small village nestled among the mountains, a place where life moved slowly and where the presence of God was felt in every gentle breeze that blew through the valleys. The villagers, simple and devout, began their days to the sound of the church bells, which echoed throughout the village, calling them to morning prayer. For Mary, these moments of communal prayer were the most cherished, for it was there, in the small stone church, that she felt the presence of God most strongly. From a young age, Mary showed a deep devotion, something her parents, devout Christians, always nurtured and encouraged. Her father, John, was a man of few words but great faith. He worked as a carpenter and often said that his work connected him to St. Joseph himself, who was also a carpenter and the earthly father of Jesus. Mary loved watching her father work in the small workshop next to their house. He frequently carved crucifixes and images of saints, each piece made with a love and reverence that Mary knew were inspired by his faith. Her mother, Anna, was the heart of their home. A woman with a generous heart, Anna cared not only for her family, but also for the needy in the village. She believed that serving others was serving Christ, and Mary grew up watching her mother feed the hungry, clothe the poor, and care for the sick. Anna had a daily routine of reading the scriptures and always made time to teach Mary about the lessons contained in the Bible. In the evenings, after dinner, they would sit by the fireplace, and Anna would read stories from the Gospels, followed by the lives of the saints, which inspired Mary with examples of virtue, courage, and sacrifice. As Mary grew, her faith only deepened. She actively participated in the church services and activities, helping organize celebrations, cleaning the chapel and visiting the sick alongside the local priest. Father Matthias, an elderly and wise man, always saw something special in Mary. He believed that God had a plan for her, though that plan was still unknown. He often said, "Mary, you are a light in this world, a flame that the Lord has kindled. Let that flame shine, for you will bring hope to many who seek it." Although Mary deeply loved her village, she always felt a burning desire to see the world beyond the mountains. She dreamed of the great cathedrals in distant cities, where the bells rang out with power and the voices of choirs soared to the heavens in praise of God. She dreamed of dense forests, where the beauty of God's creation was manifested in every leaf, in every flower. She dreamed of the vast and mysterious seas, which seemed endless, reflecting the infinity of God's love. But being from a humble family, traveling was a dream she didn't know if she would ever fulfill. One day, while walking through the fields near her village, Mary spotted an old tree, imposing and solitary, standing out in the landscape. It was an ancient tree with deep roots that seemed to intertwine with the very sacred soil. The tree had a crevice in its trunk, and something inside it caught Mary's attention. Curious, she approached, and upon closer inspection, saw that there was a small book hidden there, protected by the thick roots. The book had a leather cover worn by time, and its pages seemed to glow with a soft golden light. At the top of the first page, the title read, "The Chronicle of Destinies." Mary felt that this discovery was more than a coincidence. It was divine providence. She took the book home, and that night, after helping her mother with the chores and ensuring everything was in order, she sat by the fireplace, opened the book, and began to read. As she turned the pages, Mary discovered that the book told stories of people who, like her, had felt the call to leave their homes and follow a path that God had laid out for them. These stories were filled with trials and challenges, but also with miracles and divine interventions. It seemed that each page had a special message, speaking directly to Mary's heart, as if God Himself were whispering in her ear. Among all the stories, one in particular deeply touched Mary's heart. It was the story of Elara, a young woman who lived in a small village, similar to Mary's, and who one day felt the call to leave her home and follow a path that God had prepared for her. Elara faced many difficulties on her journey. She had to deal with loneliness, with the fear of the unknown, and with temptations that arose to lead her astray. But with each obstacle, Elara found strength in prayer and in the trust that God was with her, guiding her steps. In the end, Elara found a place where her heart rested in peace, knowing that she had followed God's will. After finishing the reading, Mary felt her heart beat faster. She knew that, like Elara, the time had come to follow the call she felt within her. She needed to leave the safety of her village and discover what God had in store for her. But the decision was not easy. Mary knew she would be leaving behind everything she knew and loved, her family, her community, and the peaceful life she led. That night, Mary knelt by her bed, raised her hands in prayer, and asked God to guide her. She prayed fervently, asking for strength and courage to follow the path He had prepared for her. The next morning, Mary awoke with an inexplicable peace in her heart. She knew she had made the right decision and that God was by her side. She prepared her few belongings, some clothes, a piece of bread, a bottle of water, and, of course, the mysterious book she now considered a gift from God. She said goodbye to her parents, who blessed her and reminded her to always keep her faith and trust in the Lord in all things. As Mary began to descend the trail that would lead her out of the village, she felt a mixture of emotions: excitement for what was to come, and a slight sadness at leaving behind everything she knew. However, she remembered the words of Father Matthias: "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths." These words echoed in her mind like a beacon, lighting her way. As she walked, Mary encountered several people along the way, and each meeting seemed to be an opportunity that God had placed before her. Once, she met a desperate farmer whose crops were drying up due to lack of rain. Mary felt compassion for the man and, without hesitation, offered to help him. Together, they dug ditches to redirect water from a nearby stream to the parched fields. The work was arduous, but Mary prayed continuously, asking God to bless their efforts. When they finished, the rain finally fell on the fields, as if in direct response to her prayers. The farmer, with tears in his eyes, thanked Mary and God for that miracle, and in gratitude gave her some of his harvest. On another occasion, while walking through a dense forest, Mary heard the cry of a child. Following the sound, she found a small boy, lost and frightened. The boy, named Peter, told Mary that he had wandered away from his mother during a walk and couldn't find his way back. Mary comforted the boy, telling him that he was not alone, for God was with them, and together they would find their way back. With patience and guided by divine intuition, Mary walked through the forest until they found a familiar trail. They followed the trail, and by the end of the day, Mary reunited Peter with his mother. The woman, relieved and grateful, thanked Mary with a warm embrace and praised God for sending an angel to help her son. Upon arriving in a small village, Mary heard stories of an evil spirit that haunted the surrounding forest, preventing the villagers from gathering wood or hunting. The villagers were gripped by fear, believing that the spirit had been sent as a curse for some past sin. Mary, with her unwavering faith, knew that this was a test for them and felt that she needed to intervene. That night, she went to the forest and knelt in prayer, asking God to expel the darkness from that place and bring peace to the hearts of the villagers. She spent the night in prayer, and at dawn, the villagers noticed that the spirit had disappeared. The village returned to its normal routine, and Mary was seen as a savior, though she always attributed everything to God, insisting that it was not she, but the Lord who worked those miracles. As her journey continued, Mary finally arrived in a great city, surrounded by imposing walls and tall towers that touched the sky. The city was a whirlwind of activity, full of sounds, smells, and faces from all parts of the world. Mary was impressed by the grandeur of the cathedrals, whose colorful stained glass windows shone in the sunlight, reflecting biblical stories that inspired faith and devotion. As she entered the city, Mary made the sign of the cross and thanked God for guiding her there safely. She felt that this place, with its bustling streets and diverse inhabitants, would be the setting for her next mission. But where to start? Mary prayed for guidance and soon found work in a small bookstore in the city center. The bookstore, owned by an old man named Tobias, was a quiet place filled with old and new books, all carefully organized on polished wooden shelves. Tobias, an elderly man with poor eyesight, was grateful to have Mary's help. He taught her about the business of selling books, but also noticed something special in her. A wisdom beyond her years, a deep understanding of the scriptures and the lives of the saints. Mary, for her part, enjoyed the work, as the quiet environment of the bookstore allowed her to continue her readings and reflections. However, Mary knew that God had brought her to that city for a greater purpose. She continued to read the mysterious book, which always brought new stories and lessons. One day, while organizing books on the shelf, Mary found an old volume covered in dust. Upon opening the book, her heart nearly stopped. It was a copy of the same book she had found in the old tree. But something was different. On the last pages there was an unfinished story, which spoke of a young woman who had left her village in the mountains and was about to discover her true destiny in the great city. Mary knew that the story was about her, and that the next chapter was in her hands to be written. Determined to fulfill God's will, Mary prayed for guidance and decided that her mission in the city would be to open her own bookstore, where she could share the stories that had shaped her life and help others find the light of Christ. She shared her idea with Tobias, who, despite being old and tired, offered to help her realize her dream. Together, they saved enough to rent a small space in the city center, where Mary began to build her bookstore. The space was modest, but Mary filled it with books that she believed could transform lives. She carefully selected each volume, preferring those that carried messages of faith, hope, and love. In addition to selling books, Mary also offered a space for reflection and prayer. People who entered her bookstore felt an immediate peace, as if they had entered a sanctuary amidst the chaos of the city. She listened to the life stories of her customers, offering them words of encouragement and prayers. always ready to help anyone who was lost or in need. Over time, Mary's bookstore became a gathering place for Christians, travelers, and dreamers. People came from all over, attracted not only by the books, but by Mary's presence, which radiated a faith so deep that it seemed contagious. She not only sold books, but also shared the gospel and the lessons she had learned along her journey. Many who entered her bookstore left transformed, feeling that they had found more than just a book. They had found hope and a new direction for their lives. Among the many people Mary met was a young man named John. He was a young man full of doubts and fears, lost about his future. John had come to the city in search of answers, but found only confusion and uncertainty. Upon entering Mary's bookstore, he was immediately drawn to the calm and serenity of the place. Mary, noticing the burden John was carrying, approached him with a welcoming smile and asked how she could help. John poured out his heart, telling her about his anxieties and doubts. Mary listened attentively, with the same patience her mother Anna had taught her. After listening to him, Mary handed John a copy of the mysterious book, saying, "Read with an open heart, and God will show you the way." John, though skeptical, accepted the book and began reading it that very night. As he progressed in his reading, John felt a change in his heart. The words of the book seemed to speak directly to him, illuminating his path and showing him that his true vocation was the priesthood. A few months later, John decided to enter the seminary, dedicating his life to the service of God. The fame of Mary's bookstore spread throughout the city, and many came from afar just to meet her. Mary, however, never sought fame or recognition. She knew that everything she did was by God's grace and that He was always by her side, guiding her steps. Her greatest desire was to continue being an instrument of God's will, helping others find the path of faith and hope. Years passed, and Mary, now an older woman, looked back with gratitude and satisfaction. She had lived a full life, filled with challenges and blessings, and her unwavering faith had guided her through paths she never imagined. She found her true purpose, not in wealth or worldly glory, but in serving others and spreading the love of Christ. One day, in her old age, Mary received a letter from John, who was now a dedicated priest in a distant parish. In the letter, he thanked Mary for being the light that guided him in the darkest moment of his life. He told her about his work in the parish, where he helped young people find their way, just as she had done with him. John ended the letter by saying, "Mary, you were the hand of God in my life, and your faith continues to inspire many. May the Lord bless you always." Mary smiled as she read the letter, feeling a deep joy in her heart. She knew she had fulfilled her role in the great story that God was writing. Now, it was time to rest and wait for the moment when she would be called to reunite with the Lord. That night, Mary knelt by her bed, as she had done since childhood, and thanked God for each day, for each encounter, and for every soul He allowed her to touch. She knew that her life, though simple, had been rich in purpose and meaning. As she lay down, Mary felt a deep peace, knowing that she was ready to meet her Creator. And so, in the silence of the night, Mary fell asleep, never to wake again in this world. When the townspeople heard of her passing, many mourned her loss, but they also celebrated the life she had lived. Mary's bookstore remained open, now run by others who had been touched by her faith. Her legacy continued, and the stories she shared with so much love began to inspire new generations. And so, the Chronicle of Mary, a story of faith, perseverance, and love echoed through the generations, reminding everyone that even in the most difficult journeys, God is always by our side, guiding our steps and illuminating our path.